You know, when you think about the future of gaming, what comes to your mind? Do you think Netflix style streaming? Because we already have that, really. That's not the future. That's something that's viable right now. It's just that most people don't care for it and most people don't use it. Most people, I think, in terms of hardcore gamers, prefer to have their dedicated box, whether they can use physical discs or download, just digital copies, but have that ownership feel. I'm not saying that streaming games for some things wouldn't appeal to a certain audience, like a more casual audience. And I was on BGST last night, and we were all talking about the future of gaming and how Google and possibly Amazon might be interested in getting involved in some type of gaming. I personally feel like if Google or Amazon got into gaming, it would be more casual based, like Amazon has done that before. They did the Amazon Fire gaming console that was like cloud based and stuff like that. It was like a cheap thing, and you could play Minecraft and you could play Telltale games from it and stuff like that. It was kind of a flop. Like hardcore gamers aren't going to really flock to that stuff, in my opinion. Part of the reason why Sony's been so successful this generation is because they've done a fantastic job at really appealing to that audience that they cater to so well, which is that hardcore audience that likes that single player kind of status quo. They don't push their changes too much on people, and because change scares a lot of people, myself included. I don't ever want to see a situation where cloud gaming is the only gaming option we have, right? I think that would be bad for everybody. I was originally against Game Pass, I think, because it maybe signaled that Microsoft might be going towards more of a service-based thing, and that could still be the case. I don't know. Now I just look at Game Pass as kind of a never was, because I don't think it's a very big deal. It's a way to leverage Microsoft's first-party games this year specifically, and in the future. It could be big in the future, who knows? But I'm saying right now it's not a very big deal because third parties aren't on board with it. And everybody thinks Netflix, it's going to be the Netflix. I keep hearing this word thrown out there. And when you look into it, Netflix's operating income was at a loss in 2017. Like, they were actually, according to a couple of different reports, in the hole because they buy all this content and they spend all this money and they don't recoup it all. That's why they keep having to raise the price of it. Hulu, another streaming service, lost $1 billion last year. That's a lot of money. So when you look at Netflix and Hulu, they might not be as successful as one might think. So you might not really want to compare them, because games can cost more than those things. And the thing is, with Hulu and Netflix, those are available on phones, hundreds and hundreds of devices to hundreds of millions of people, whereas video games aren't nearly available to hardly a fraction of what Netflix and Hulu are available to, and those things are losing money. So what makes you think that having your games on a Netflix-style gaming service would make money with less possible people? And games cost more money than TV shows and some movies and things like that. Like, some games cost upwards of $100 million these days. Your Halos and things like that. So be careful when you compare to these different types of things. You know what I'm saying? So what's really interesting is the fact that I was reading an article where and this is a newer article, where Phil Spencer is talking about Game Pass, right? And he was talking about basically how this is going to be a thing going forward, right? So this guy says, who's interviewing him, his name's Ben Gilbert. He says, if I'm EA or Activision or whatever, a so-called third-party game publisher, why would I put my games on Game Pass at launch? Is that even a goal here? And Phil responds, just like I say on Gamer's side about choice, I just look at us giving our publishers and our developers choice as well. I'm not here to dictate the terms of how they deliver content and what avenues they choose. I think you're right that when you look at a big third party, whether they're going to look at shipping their games day and date, and Game Pass is the option for them, will be based on their business, not my business. For gamers themselves, the commitment I make is to ship our first-party games into Game Pass. But I will say, from a discussion with third parties, I think everybody's excited about the innovation here, because everybody has seen how subscriptions like Netflix and Spotify has brought in more listeners or more watchers, or in our case, more players. But how they will evolve their business choices will be up to them over time. Today, a majority of games that are in Game Pass, but as you say, they're not day-and-date games, they're games that have been out for a longer period of time. So right there you see that third parties, while Phil keeps trying to kind of spin it like they're super interested, don't seem like they're very interested in it in terms of day and date. So we'll probably consider to see third parties, but I just don't see them as seeing a benefit of putting their games in their day and date at launch. So they asked him, you know, and that of course appeals to some people, kind of an instant library of games, but demand for newer games is exactly what drove Microsoft to institute this new policy for first-party games going forward. What, if anything, is Microsoft going to do to get third-party games on Game Pass closer to launch? And Phil said, we're still within the first year of Game Pass. The response has been great. We're continuing to learn and listen and have conversations with our third-party partners and our customers, frankly, about things that they would like to see. I'm bullish on Game Pass long-term potential to allow people to play the games they want on the devices they want, and I think that as we continue to build the audience for Game Pass, our discussions with third parties will continue to grow. Game Pass wouldn't happen today without the third-party support we have. I think it's critical, and as we make these moves, our third parties are right there asking what we learned. And that's getting about a bit of another topic, but something that's worth hitting on. As I look at our first party and the things that we want to do, one of the things that I've really been focused on over the last couple of years is how do we make sure our first party is doing innovative things that can help expand the market for everybody. Not necessarily just going after genres where third parties have success today, but can we try to do new things? This obviously isn't something a first party is doing with their game specifically, it's just how a game launches. But it's an opportunity for us to take our first party, try something that's great for consumers, learn from that, share that with third parties, and continue to grow the business. And I think that's a critical role for us as a first party publisher. Phil is really all about growing the industry, and I really think he has no qualms about putting Xbox games on whatever platform they can. And here's a big question, right? He says, given that it's been about 6 months since the launch of Game Pass, how has it been so far in terms of pickup? Are you releasing any numbers in terms of how many people are using Game Pass? And Phil responded, we're not releasing any numbers. I will say that this is playing to a strength that we've seen on our platform. We've had really great response to Game Pass, so that the customer voice is what's going on with Game Pass from our subscriber is something that we're very tuned into right now. So when you look at the opportunity, something along the lines, it's a strength for our console because it's available there, but also in the longer run with things like Mixer and putting Minecraft on all platforms with crossplay, we're very much about reaching the gamer where they want to play. And in this case, it's letting those gamers reach the gamer in the way they want to be reached. So I apologize for not announcing a number. I will say that we're very, very happy with the success we've had with Game Pass, and we see this as a way of further investing into something that's working. They ask him what the long-term goal is for it. Do they think it's going to be something that'll replace more traditional means of getting games, buying in the store or downloading? And Phil said, I think it's a good question. It's actually a good vein of conversation because some people will draw almost a one-to-one analogy between PlayStation Now or a Game Pass with Netflix. Forget about one being downloaded and one being streamed, but more that subscription model. I think the business model diversity in video games is a strength of video games. It's something we should all make sure we don't take for granted, that when customers find a great game and they love it and they're willing to continue to invest in that game, and frankly, when they're not, they're pretty vocal about not liking the business model diversity. We've seen some of that even in the last few months, but the diversity we have in our space is a real strength. We're not dependent upon one business model. There are games on your phone that solely exist because of the ads and advertising. There are models out there that are completely based on the day one purchase of a game, and those games can be incredibly successful. We should love that. And then we look at free-to-play and episodic and things like subscriptions. We should all take it as a real strength of the video game business that we're able to support so many different business models in a healthy way. I think it provides a really strength to a foundation for a craft and business that I love, and we look forward to strong for decades to come, blah, blah, blah. I will link this so you guys can check it out. Basically, he's saying that it'll be an option, but he really does do a good job at kind of stressing the point that you got to have those options because people are very vocal if you don't. And I like that kind of take on it. So I'm very kind of interested to see what happens in the future. I know for me personally, I don't mind streaming or, Game Pass or anything like that. I think these are all great options. I just don't want them to become the norm or where you don't have the option to actually use something else. Like for me personally, I really like the idea of being able to buy my games and play them that way, as an option. I don't ever be locked into where I have to stream because I play online a lot, and I can't imagine there ever being a time where streaming internet, streaming your games and also streaming where you have to play a game online, that's like double the latency problems. So for me personally, that's never going to be something that I'm going to do. But at the end of the day, I can understand as an option, or maybe to some casuals or something like that. I think that would be more along the lines of something that we could see in the future. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Like I said, this is all very interesting topics of discussion for me, because it's very much out of my comfort zone in terms of what I would like to see in the future and what I wouldn't. And, you know, I think that that's important, you know, open up a kind of a dialogue. Are you guys happy with... I mean, it seems like Phil really, like in all these interviews that I read, he really just wants to, quote-unquote, grow the industry and put his games on whatever platform will have them, right? So I would not think it out of the realm of possibility to one day see Xbox games on a Nintendo platform or whatever else. Now, the only reason why I don't think they would go on a Sony platform is because Sony wouldn't allow it. But I bet Microsoft would. Very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. If you ever listen to what Phil Spencer says in these interviews, it sounds so much like he would love to have all of his stuff on as many platforms as possible. So I would think it would be interesting. Let me know what you guys think. Sound off, rate, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Rack 'em up. Crapgamer out.